You've heard of haunted houses, but what about a haunted lake? Not one with a ghost story, but something far more unsettling. A body of water so deep, so cold, and so silent that anything lost within it simply never returns. There are lakes across the country known for their dangerous cold water, sudden storms, human error. But this one is different. It's a place where science and silence collide, where fact gets lost in fear. It's not officially named in any reports, and the details change depending on who tells the story. But one thing stays the same. This lake never gives back what it takes. The legend usually starts in the mountains, where ancient glaciers carved out impossibly deep basins. These lakes are famous for their stunning beauty and their freezing temperatures, even in the middle of summer. Now, here's the science part. Cold water drastically slows down decomposition. Forensic experts will tell you that in very cold, deep lakes, bodies can stay preserved for a long, long time. The usual gases that would make a body float to the surface never build up. So, it's entirely possible for someone to sink and just stay there. But the stories about this particular lake go beyond physics. People talk about swimmers, boaters, and hikers who vanished beneath the surface and were never seen again. And it's not for lack of trying. Search teams with sonar, divers, and boats have combed the waters, but they always come back with nothing. Officially, the explanation is the terrain. The lake bed is a maze of sudden drop-offs, underwater cliffs, and tangled, preserved trees from when the valley was first flooded. It's a recovery diver's worst nightmare. A body could easily get trapped in a crevice, far beyond anyone's reach. That makes perfect sense. Unofficially, the stories are much darker. The most famous one revolves around a park ranger who worked there for over 20 years. You won't find his name in any public records, but his story has become a local legend. It began one foggy morning after a small fishing boat with 2 men on board went missing. They had gone out before sunrise and just never came back. The ranger said the fog was so thick you could barely see your own feet. The search boats moved slowly, their calls muffled by the mist. After a while, they found some debris floating cooler, a fishing net, a single life jacket, but no sign of the men. When the fog finally lifted, the lake was perfectly still, like a sheet of dark glass. Divers were sent down. They described hitting a sharp thermocline layer, where the water temperature plummets. This is normal in deep lakes, but they said crossing it felt strange, as if the water itself was pulling them down. One diver reported that the pressure felt unreasonably heavy, even though his gauges were normal. They found nothing. The search went on for days, but the lake's treacherous underwater landscape made it impossible. The men were never found. This is where the folklore really takes over. Some locals whispered that the lake took the men for disrespecting it, an old belief tied to deep waters. Others spoke of a cold hand beneath the surface, a chilling phrase that pops up in different versions of the tale. An old woman who lived nearby once told a visitor that the lake keeps what it needs to stay quiet. But perhaps the most unnerving part of the legend is the sound. People claim that on calm, foggy mornings, strange noises rise from the water, not bubbles or waves, but a low hum, or what some describe as a muffled cry, a voice buried so deep it's distorted by the pressure and cold. Scientists have studied lake acoustics. They know that underwater rock formations and shifting temperature layers can create bizarre sounds that might be mistaken for voices, a perfectly logical explanation. But then you hear the other stories. Like the hiker who was alone at the water's edge at sunset. As he leaned down to fill his water bottle, he swore he heard his name whispered from just beneath the surface. It wasn't a loud sound, more like a vibration he felt in the water. He looked, and ripples were spreading from where his hand had been, even though he hadn't touched the surface. Then there's the story of a family visiting the lake. Their young son kept asking his mom why the people at the bottom of the lake were moving so slowly. When she asked what he meant, he pointed to the dark water and said he could see shadows walking. A child's imagination, almost certainly, but it's a detail that sends a shiver down your spine. The ranger, the one from the beginning of the story, eventually retired. He said he never once swam in that lake, not even on the hottest days. He hated how quiet it was, how throwing a rock into the water didn't make a satisfying splash, but a dull thud, as if the sound was being swallowed. He always maintained that the depth and the cold were why the bodies were never recovered. But he admitted there was one thing he could never explain. Years after the fisherman disappeared, he was walking along the shore in the early morning fog. As he passed the wooden dock, he heard a single, sharp knock from underneath it. Not a splash, not a log bumping against a post. A knock, as if someone had struck the wood from below. He walked out onto the dock, knelt down, and listened. Another knock came, softer this time. Then, total silence. There were no waves, no bubbles, no sign of anyone in the water. He said he'd worked around docks his whole life and had never heard a sound like it, hollow, deliberate, and intentional. After that morning, he avoided the lake as much as he could. So, what is the truth? Cold water physics, glacial geology, and underwater hazards can explain why a lake might not give up its dead. These are documented facts, but folklore exists to fill the gaps where science can't reach, to give a personality to a place defined by its silence. People visit this lake every year. Some just see a beautiful, pristine mountain lake. Others feel a deep, unshakable sense of unease. The water is crystal clear near the shore, but it darkens quickly into an opaque, blue-green abyss that hides everything. Ultimately, the story of this lake isn't about ghosts. It's about a primal human fear of the unknown, of what lies in the deep dark. It's the chilling realization that just a few feet below the sunny surface, the light fades, the pressure builds, and the silence is absolute. And if you ever stand at the edge of a place known for keeping secrets, you start to understand why some silences are too deep to disturb. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. Stay curious.